All right, welcome back in. Hour number 2, Hang with Hester, presented by Richards Honda. Hunt Palmer here with me on a Thursday afternoon. Excited to catch up with one of my favorite guys, Mike Golic Jr. of ESPN Radio, joins us now. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Doing well. Hey, I've got a question for you before we get into any of the NFL CBA. I do Sirius XM radio, and it's from 6 to 9. And so when I'm driving to the studio at 5:15 a.m., I mean, y'all are cock-locked and already going. When do you sleep?
You know what? Kind of whenever my body just decides to shut down at this point. I think that's become the funny thing is I don't like going to bed super early. I'm not like my dad who goes to bed. You know, if he had his way, would go to bed at probably 6:30 at night, and there's times where he does that. I just kind of sleep whenever, man.
You're like me. So, like last night, knowing I have to get up at 4:50 a.m., it's like if there's something good on TV, I can't turn it away because I have 4 children. And so by the time like we get settled and ready to go, I'm like, I got to Netflix or do something, at least 2 episodes of some sort of TV so I don't fall behind. Then you look up and it's 11:30.
Well, that's always what gets you in trouble, too. I used to have that happen all the time in college. You know, you got to get up for winter workouts in the morning. You know, you have every reason to go and get to bed, but then you get one of those Law & Order SVU marathons that I get it. It's not even high-quality stuff, but they hook you in the first 5 minutes, and now it's 4:30 in the morning, and I'm going straight to work out.
All right, I just got chills down my spine when you mentioned fourth quarter program and all season, so we'll move on from that so we don't have to talk about that anymore because that's awful. NFL CBA. Seems like this thing's going to get signed here pretty soon. I'll be honest with you. I am not a fan of the NFLPA. There's a lot of issues that I have with them, and so I don't ever trust them. I'll be honest with you. But right now, as we get close to the finish line, Mike, what are the last couple of things that they're trying to sew up so they can get a deal done?
Yeah, it really seems to be, and all the indication we've got is it's a lot closer to getting done out of nowhere than we could have imagined because you're hearing things like, all right, the ability to take care of former players, past and present, the ability to get a larger portion of that revenue share that's such a big deal for those guys, raising things like minimum salaries, none of which, by the way, I'm sure people's eyes are glassing over as I say it, because they're not sexy, but they take care of a lot of people.
Right.
Like, you know this, the number one thing you hear from a lot of people is, well, why aren't you going after the drug testing policy? Why aren't you going after the franchise tag or things like that? Because those things, while they're a big part of the conversation, as you well know, are something that affects maybe a handful of guys each and every season in a meaningful way. So I think because the NFL this time around wanted something so bad, the owners wanted the 17th game, they wanted to expand the playoffs so badly because they understand what's coming from all these television deals that the players, I think for the first time in a long time, had a real bit of leverage they could throw around.
And the preseason's always kind of come up ever since the agreement was signed in 2011. You know, if you go 2 extra games, you're going to take away preseason games. And I'm really kind of a flip-flopper on this because, yes, I hated preseason games once I became a starter in the NFL because you're going to play a couple series, then you're going to take your helmet off, take your shoulder pads off, and watch. But when I was a young player, that was my only chance to prove that I could play tailback because I was a fullback. I was a starting fullback. But in those preseason games, I got a chance to run the football. And there's a lot of guys who have had Hall of Fame careers that have made the team on that 4th preseason game alone. So a little bit of my worry is if you take that away, you take away an opportunity for some of these guys.
Yeah, and I'm hoping they find a way to supplement that. What we've seen, especially as of late, is those joint practices have really become in vogue, and it's the typical NFL solution where anytime the Patriots start doing something, everyone else looks around and says, yeah, let's do that too. And so you get a lot of these teams, and I think we'll see that going forward more of those joint practices that'll serve as more opportunities, especially for young guys to get out there, for their own teams to be able to scout them against different competition, and hopefully supplement some of that. Because I'm with you. I mean, I was an undrafted free agent. My only shot to make the teams was going to go out in the second half of those preseason games and that whole 4th one and try and lay it on the line. So I'm maybe, like you said, misguidedly trusting that there's going to be some way to kind of offset that, even if you're giving away preseason games.
What do you make of the reports yesterday of expanding the playoffs to 7 teams?
Honestly, I looked at that and I get it. Like from a fan perspective, am I going to watch? Yes, I'm going to be glued to the extended wild card weekend because I don't know any better because I'm a moth to a flame and they know they've got me here. But on like principle, because I rail against this when we get to March Madness every year, adding more teams to the mix does not a better playoff make. Like you're rewarding teams that did not have as good of a year as the teams that we traditionally seen in the playoffs. We know, I think the majority of teams that would have made it had this format been around going back to 2002 would have been about 9-win teams. You'd have had some good, not great teams in there. This last year would have been the Rams and Steelers, and I just keep going, all right, so you're going to add that team in. You're going to take away a bye from the 2 seed, which we know how valuable those byes are at the end of the season, the war of attrition that is the NFL, and you're going to overwhelmingly put the advantage in favor of the 1 seed right now. To me, you're not really helping the competitive balance. You're hurting those 2 and 3 seed teams that might still be our best hope at giving that 1 seed a chance because, I mean, other than 2012, it's been the 1 seed almost every year with some 2 seeds mixed in the last couple. So to me, it's just an unnecessary shift.
Catch up with Mike Golic Jr. of ESPN Radio here on Hangin with Hester. Mike, you talked about some former player stuff, and I know that you get insurance if you're a vested guy 5 years after you retire, and that's a great benefit. It truly is. How much former player stuff do you think goes into this new CBA, though?
You know what? I think it's one of those things. I think it's a priority. It's probably not the priority, right? Like, I think what they're looking for is to maybe extend that number. You mentioned the amount of years there. I would guess they're trying to push that back even further, make sure that even more is covered. And I'd imagine just because of what an emphasis there's been on the head injury portion of things, the mental health components of all this, some of the CTE fears that have certainly crept into football, that's something that maybe more guys are realizing, less that, they've heard the cries of some of their former peers and more they're looking at themselves. The Richard Shermans, the guys that are really leading the charge in a lot of this are saying, one day we're going to be in their shoes, and so we probably need to make sure we're paying ourselves forward on this. So I don't think it'll be as important as the revenue split for them, raising minimum salaries, but it's going to be in that top 4 or 5 on the item list.
Mike, obviously around here, all eyes in the quarterback market were on Drew Brees. Now he's made his decision to come back and play for the Saints. What quarterback now around the league that still has some decisions to make is most fascinating to you?
I mean, what? After this morning, Tom Brady's the name everyone's been focused on, but we talked to Jeff Darlington, who does a great job for us as one of our NFL reporters and insiders, and he has really had a beat on a lot of the potential movement in the last couple off seasons. And talking to him this morning on air, he said, it seems like Brady's camp is content to go through a lot of the mechanics of looking around and seeing what the best situation could be. He said the Titans are very much in play. The Las Vegas Raiders are very much in play. We all kind of penciled Tom in for the Chargers and just figured that'd be the easy slot because of there. But now we're hearing he's going to take meetings kind of a la Kevin Durant style in one location. So I think Tom Brady, and we probably undersold the fact that a 42 going on 43-year-old, 20-year starting quarterback with one team set it up so that he would hit true free agency in his early 40s. Like, that doesn't smell to me like somebody who's not interested in taking their 5 official visits, to put it in college football terms. He seems content to want to go around, to feel loved, and really explore this process.
Mike, this is a quarterback carousel like we've never seen before. I mean, we could go through the names. Tom Brady, Drew Brees is the first piece to move, Phillip Rivers, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Ryan Tannehill, Dak Prescott. And that's not even counting the draft guys, right? Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa and Herbert and where they fall and Tua's hip and all those things. I don't know if we've ever seen so much movement with starting quarterbacks. I mean, these are guys that are going to be starters on every team for the most part that they sign with.
It really is amazing. And the funny part is, too, about this, that's like it could be more movement than we've ever seen, or everyone could kind of stay put.
Right.
And it could re-sign with the Titans. You could have Jameis Winston get franchise tagged and stick around for a little bit in Tampa Bay. Andy Dalton in Cincinnati stay on maybe as a mentor. Because a lot of these guys, like the kicker is, none of their salaries, when we're talking about some of these mid-level guys especially, are killers. But my hope is, in a couple of instances, we'll see them go around and create competition, right? Quarterbacks at one spot on the field that we rarely seem to think it's okay to challenge in that room and have a little bit of competition. Everywhere else, they're fine with it. I would love to see the Chicago Bears take a chance on an Andy Dalton or a flyer on a Marcus Mariota in that room with Mitch and say, yeah, you know what? We understand we got Mitch on a rookie deal, but we also have a football team that's ready in a lot of ways to win games. Now, let's bring him in and see. If the Raiders want to keep Derek Carr around for the move, same deal. Maybe bring in a Cam Newton. He's not going to have a huge number next year. Bring him in, and all of a sudden you've got a little bit of a battle going on. You can push and maybe improve in that position with minimal risk, and I think that's the interesting part about this offseason.
All right, I've got one for you. And, of course, Mike Golic Jr. is our guest here on Hanging with Hester. I've got to find out, where does my guy go? Where does Phillip Rivers quarterback in 2020?
Phillip Rivers is actually the one that feels clean, right? Like Phillip Rivers and Indianapolis seem like too great a marriage. He's got that history with Frank Reich. He would work well behind an offensive line. This is one for me that is entirely selfish because we have all watched Phillip Rivers late in a Sunday afternoon down a touchdown with about 2 minutes to go in a timeout in the length of the field. And I just never feel like through all that he's been a guy that's been well protected. It's been a revolving door of injury in front of him. And what better reward and chance at the end of a career to see Phillip Rivers, the ultimate gunslinger, this cowboy playing quarterback wearing bolo ties, behind maybe the best offensive line in football. They have a real chance as he ages to take that team and work behind that group and maybe have some of that success and finally win a couple of those games as we head into 60 minutes on Sunday.
A couple things on that. That would be fantastic because so much of his time spent with the Chargers at the end was guys that would be signed on a Thursday and start on a Sunday because of injuries on that offensive line. So to see him with that offensive line would be great. The second part of that, when the Colts opened up Lucas Oil Stadium, the high school state championship games for Indiana were taking place. We actually walked into the building. Not one person recognized who Phillip Rivers was, and we were able to sit there and watch the Indiana State playoff games before we played the Colts. So he wouldn't be bothered either. He'd be okay.
No, and you know what? I think at this point for Phillip Rivers, I mean, how perfect is that? You go in, and he's always been a guy that it's about football and it's about raising his 9, probably going on 10 children now. And so Indianapolis is such a great town for that. It's a place where he can enjoy that low-key business and especially at the end of his career, focus on the task at hand.
All right, he's Mike Golic Jr., does a great job every single day for ESPN Radio. Mike, appreciate the time as always, my man.
Thanks for having me, brother.